I'm glad to see everybody networking and talking already. That's perfect. I love seeing that stuff. Sorry we're starting a little late. There were some technical difficulties with the Eventbrite, and the link was actually going to a different location, so there's probably 200 people at a different hotel right now. I sent an email to everybody telling them to come here, but that's why we're late. But we're going to get started now. So this is my third. I talked to some of you already. This is my third South by. And 2 years ago, I spoke at the formal programming, the official programming. Last year, I was an attendee. And what I realized last year is that all the unofficial events and parties and stuff were like way better than the actual $1,000 thing. I mean, how many people came without a badge? Oh my, that many people came without a badge, right? Like the majority of people, which is amazing. I love it. So I wanted to be a part of that unofficial movement, right? And the other thing that I realized was that amongst those unofficial activities, most of them were just like parties, right? Where you walk in, there's just a million people and beer and food, right? I wanted to provide something practical that we could really use to become better and to learn. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want, right? We want to become better. We want to learn, and we want to be more passionate about what we do. So that's why we're here. So really quick format. We've got 3 speakers here. Got a couple amazing speakers who I can't wait to hear myself, and then a short panel. If it stays, it remains this size, then we won't even have a panel because we'll just have a conversation. I mean, it's small enough. I thought there were going to be 200 people here, and so you can hashtag the giant red button all of your questions. But if not, we'll just have a conversation. And what that really, I think that's the most exciting part for me because it contextualizes it to what you guys are looking for, and really that's really our goal here. We want it to be a format and an opportunity for you guys to hear what we have to say about your specific questions that you might come here with. So yeah, I guess I'll start then. So I've been designing interfaces and experiences for a long time. I started in technology as a programmer back in '95. I started working at Adobe as a software developer. I did that for a few years, and then caught the startup bug in 1999, right? And so I started at PayPal in 1999. It was a really small company at the time, but I started doing front-end development there and sort of moving into UX and design and product management and product design and all those things that you're offered at a startup, at a very small 30-person startup, right? That's one of the greatest things about that is that you get to work alongside these great, super bright people, and you get experience in doing all these types of things. So I sort of grew up with that company. The company went public in 2003, and then was acquired by eBay for a little over $1 billion in 2003. By eBay. And then after that, I started founding a series of startups. So I did Ginn.com, which was a Facebook for families, turned into a sort of a research platform for genealogists, and then Yammer in 2008. So we started Yammer in 2008. In 2013, it was acquired by Microsoft. That was last year for 1.3. Genie was also acquired in the same year by one of our biggest competitors. And so after that, I went on to do another startup called BetterWorks, which was a huge flame out. We raised $10 million, and 18 months later, it died, right? So you win some, you lose some, right? But my point is that I've been doing this for a long time, and at the end of the day, the job of a designer or UX professional is to create an engaging experience, right? At the end of the day, that's all you need to do. You need to create an engaging experience, right? And so I also advise companies. So right now, I don't work for a particular company, but I advise startups and individual entrepreneurs. And they all have a lot of the questions are the same questions, right? They have questions about engagement. They have questions about growth. They have questions about virality. And what it really comes down to is a question of engagement, right? How do you get to engagement, right? And so that's what I'm going to talk about, basically. I'm going to talk about basically 5 steps to greater engagement. And at the end of the day, I'll position these things as questions, right? So the 5 questions are as follows. Does your site or app, actually, let me take the show of hands. How many people are working on apps versus websites? And then websites versus apps. Okay, good. So does your website seem simple, right? Number two, does your website meet the expectations of your user, right? Number three, does your website immediately demonstrate value, right? And I'll have this deck available later. Number four, does your website clearly tell your users what to do? Tell your users what to do, right? And number five, is it magical? Is your website magical, right? And so, you know, I've summed up like a lot of people have questions, and I talk about these same topics over and over again. And I think if you could say yes to all of these things, it will lead to greater engagement. I'm going to talk about why, right? So, number one, create a perception of simplicity, right? You don't have to have a simple product, right? Like, in order to reach disruption, you have to have something very complicated, sophisticated on the back end, right? Like, dozens of engineers are working on this thing, and a lot of times the business logic is crazy. A lot of times you have logistics, for like Uber, for example. There's on-the-ground logistics, right? There's physical issues that you have to worry about. But what I'm talking about is the perception of the user, right? Does it seem and feel simple to your users, right? And a lot of times that's the goal of the job. It's to take something very sophisticated and complex and boil it down and make it very, very simple, right? So this is an example. Anyone use Lyft here? Lyft is like Uber X. It allows regular drivers to become taxi drivers. And it's extremely complicated on the back end, right? There's all this stuff. They have dozens of engineers working on all these things. And logistically nightmare. But guess what? When I launch the app, what do you see, right? When I launch the app, I see a map with me in the middle and a bunch of cars like roving around me, right? And one button, one giant blue button. In this case, it's called Request Lyft, right? So when you click the button, car shows up and you get to go where you're gonna go, right? So they somehow managed to take this and distill it down to something that is perceived as being very, very simple to the user. And how do you do that, right? One way you could do that is to remove distractions and to focus on the primary path, right? This is an example of focusing on the primary path, right? A lot of designers, a lot of product managers tend to take the entire sitemap or the entire workflow, like all the errors, and try to figure all those out and spend the same amount of time doing all of those paths. But what we really need to do, I think, is spend 80%, 90% of your time on one path. And focus on that. And just very optimistically say, I'm going to create an experience so simple that no one's ever going to make a mistake. So I don't have to worry about any of those other paths, right? Focus on the primary path. There is, for your research, there's the founder of Bump. Remember that app that you bump two iPhones together and it shares contact information? He wrote an article on TechCrunch where he talked about cognitive overhead. And you can search it on TechCrunch. And cognitive overhead is basically the number of jumps that your brain has to make in order to understand a singular concept, a single primary path. And the idea is to reduce the number, the amount of cognitive overhead that is required in order to understand something. And if you could do that, then you've successfully focused on the primary path and created a really simple application. Number two, be an advocate for your user. Okay, so designers do design, right? We do design. We were talking about this earlier today, right? We do design, but what I'm offering here is to focus on being, focus on becoming an advocate, right? Because do you want to be a designer, or like a level 1 designer who just does design and like gets work thrown at them and said, like, from engineers or marketers, like, just make this pretty, right? Right? Do you want to be that level, or do you want to be the thought leader in the company, right? And do you want to be connected to the success or failure of the company? In order to do that, you have to do and be. You have to be an advocate. And the best way to be an advocate, there's a lot of proven methods for being an advocate, right? There's building personas. How many builds personas here? If you don't have users yet, you build personas to manufacture them, and then you have something to design around, right? And then if you have users, there are formal and informal usability tests. There are interviews and lots of different methods that you could go and research and figure it out. The point is, being an advocate for users means understanding them, because when you understand your user, you understand what their expectations are, what their incentives are, and you also understand what their emotional state is. Emotional state, right? I'm going to talk about emotions a little bit later, but emotional state of the user is really, really, really important. You have to also be an advocate for the business too, though. Like, you have to be an advocate both for the user on one side and the business on the other, right? And being an advocate for the business, we talked about this earlier, is understanding what their KPIs are, right? Key performance indicators. Everybody know what a key performance indicator is? At the end of the day, businesses will derive key performance indicators, and these are things that their business relies on or lives or dies by, right? Monthly active users, monthly revenue, shares, your viral coefficient. All of these things, good businesses will have already defined them. As a designer, though, we have to understand what those are, so those will inform what we have to do, okay? Those will inform what we have to do. Understanding our users will inform how we have to do it. So what we have to do and how we have to do it. Number 3, demonstrate value immediately, okay? And to demonstrate value immediately, in my opinion, you have to do 2 things. Number 1, you have to hook their emotions immediately. You have to hook their emotions, and then you have to articulate relevance. So hook their emotions and then show something relevant as soon as you can, right? So these are a couple apps, and these same things could be applied to websites as well, right? These are the first things I see when I launch these apps, right? So when I launch Instagram, I see this beautiful photo of me on top of a mountain, watching the sun come up and feeling like I could do anything, and I captured this beautiful thing. It's making me a professional photographer. I could do anything that I want, right? And then LinkedIn's the same way. When I launched LinkedIn, I'm like, wow, this reminds me of the days when I was in San Francisco. There's so much vibrancy. There's people are walking fast with their laptops. They're building billion-dollar companies. So by the time I get to LinkedIn, I'm like, yeah, I want to meet people, right? I want to network, and I want to build a billion-dollar company. And it's amazing what a little bit of photography could do once you hook their emotions. But it's not only about hooking emotions, right? It's about being relevant to them, right? And so after you log in with Facebook, this is the first thing you see on Instagram. And guess what? It's a bunch of photos of my best friend. My best friends on Facebook, it's their likes and it's their photos. So it's immediately showing me something that is tailored to me, right? And that customization is one of the biggest steps towards creating relevance to the user. Yelp is another example. Everybody in this room uses Yelp, right? And guess what? Yelp knows a few things about me, right? First of all, they know that I'm hungry. Okay, anytime any user taps on Yelp, they are hungry. There's no other reason why anybody launches Yelp these days except because they're hungry, right? I mean, yeah, you can search for doctors, but people don't use it for doctors, right? People are either hungry and they can't eat, so they want to look at photos, or they're hungry and they want to find something, right? So Yelp knows that I'm hungry. It knows the time. It's afternoon, dinner's rolling around. It knows that I'm cheap. I normally eat at cheaper restaurants. I don't like to spend a lot of money. And it knows that I like pizza and dessert because it's keeping track of what I'm doing on site. And guess what it shows me? This is a new feature on Yelp called Yelp Nearby. It shows me the closest pizza, coffee, and dessert joints that are highest rated, and it knows somehow that I'm hungry. I can't figure it out, right? So basically, it's clairvoyant. It knows exactly what I want, and it delivers exactly what I want exactly when I need it, right? And that's relevance, right? Relevance is delivering exactly, knowing and delivering what the user wants when they need it, right? And so a lot of people ask me when they come to me, they're like, how do I make my app more viral? How do I make my website more valuable? How do I sell more? How do I get people to come back over and over again, right? The more accurate question is, how do I make my experience more relevant to my users? Because if you can achieve this kind of relevance, then all those other things fall into place, right? You're going to get people coming back to your site. You're going to get people upgrading to your premium product. You're going to get people making multiple purchases. All those things come a lot easier when you as designers or product managers or visionaries can create something that nails the relevance, right? Number 4, tell users what to do. You'd be surprised at how many sites don't do this. They offer recommendations. They're like, oh, do you like this? Would you like this? Would you like this? No, tell them what to do. Most people would prefer to be told what to do. There are some caveats though, right? So you have to state it very clearly. You can't run around. You have to state it very clearly. And the third one is actually the hardest part, is that you have to be a thought leader in that space in order to have the credibility and the authority to tell somebody what to do, right? So this is, anybody use Lumosity here? It's like one of those brain games, right? I get hooked on this thing, man. Like, talk about engagement, right? So this is one of those brain games on the iPhone, and basically, so if you can't read it, it says, in orange, it says, challenge yourself, George Ishii. It says, begin your workout in orange, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do that. You've stated it very clearly, but guess what? In gray, it also says, like exercise, today's workout can energize you and contribute to a richer life. Contribute to a richer life, how do you know that, right? Well, before I downloaded Lumosity, I actually saw their site and I was sucked in by the fact that they are context experts in this area, right? So if you go to their site, you'll realize that they have collaborated with researchers from 36 top universities. They've published 7 studies on how this app has made a real difference in people's lives, including cancer survivors, right? So they know what they're talking about, right? And so because of that credibility, when I launch this app, I have a feeling towards this thing, and I trust them when they tell me to do something. So when they say begin your workout, I'm like, yeah, I want to begin my workout because I want a better life. They're speaking into my life. They're taking something that's sort of mundane and turning it as mundane as solving puzzles and turning it into something that applies to my life. It's so much more than an app, right? And that's the goal, right? Last, make the mundane magical. Make the mundane magical, right? So again, important. In order for us to be magicians, we have to tap into emotions. I can't underscore how important tapping into the emotions of the user are. And I also can't underscore how easy it is to do. And the best way to do that is through photography, right? So one of the biggest changes to me in design over the past maybe 5 years is the importance of photography, right? And that's why, and it takes a true artist, photographer, to capture emotion in a photography, in a photo, right? So get emotions involved to create magic. And number 2, make conclusions, life conclusions about the data that you have around them. Speak into their life. If you could grab emotions and speak into someone's life, you're gonna create magic from something that's very mundane. So I'm gonna go through a couple of examples of 2 sites that do the exact same thing. You tell me which one is mundane and which one is magical, right? Okay, so in this first case, you could hail a taxi, right? Yeah, I could hail a taxi, right?
I actually work on
Or look at this, right? You could have your own personal driver on demand, right? Look at this. There is freaking so much emotion in this photo. Like when I look at this, I'm like, look at him. He is so confident. Look at the way he's dressed. He's going places. He's looking out the window. Look at that. And then look, he has a beautiful woman next to him. And guess what she's thinking? She's not thinking about what's happening outside. She's thinking about him. She's thinking, oh, my man is so confident. Look at that. And it's the same thing. It's a taxi service, right? Making the mundane magical is about cooking and emotions through photography. Here's another example, VRBO. You could book a vacation rental. It's basically a timeshare, an outdated timeshare. I can just imagine it right now when I come to the site, right? Or you guys know where this is going, right? So you could either do that, or you could experience a one-of-a-kind travel adventure, right? I don't know where this is, but actually it's in Amsterdam. I see it right now. I want to stay there, right? Because to me, that's inspirational. Like I feel like I could write a novel sitting there, and I don't even write, right? Like this photography is empowering me, and it's hooking into my aspirations and my desire to become better at that.
does the concept of imagery come into play whenever you're trying to capture that emotion into it? Because I noticed the two examples you showed, the biggest things that stood out were images.
Yes.
Images and marketing of those images.
Yes, exactly. Well, it is big marketing, right? It's a big marketing piece, right? And I think marketers have known this longer than us, UX designers, like the power of imagery and photography. Because one person mentioned this when I was going through this deck, is that the Uber image actually looked like a Gucci ad, right? It does, right? So they've known that for a long time. They understand the power of photography, but it's sort of new to UX designers, right? Because just recently we've been seeing sites like this and apps like this that have full bleed imagery on it, right? And I think a lot of that is because now bandwidth is faster and we can build these things faster. There's lots of CSS stuff that they can do now in the back end to take a small photo and put it as an entire background. But yeah, I think it's huge, right? But that's not all. What I'm saying is that this is initially how you hook their emotions, and then you have to actually make conclusions about their life. You have to make conclusions about their life, and that's the 1-2 punch, right? Like emotions alone, I don't think that's as powerful, and it won't lead to people coming back. But if you could make conclusions about their life, then it gets really interesting. I'll have a couple of examples here, right? So this is how many people have a Fitbit? You guys have Fitbit, right? So Fitbit, some people are wearing them. So Fitbit takes something pretty mundane, right? So it's walking, right? Fitbit's pretty mundane, right? Like that's pretty much the definition of mundane. Like most people don't even, like I don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to walk. I can't wait to do it, right? They've taken the mundane and they've made conclusions about it. So if you look at, this might be an earlier version of the dashboard, but this is the one that I've seen before. And this is an entire dashboard that is making conclusions about the steps that I've been taking. So I get a badge when I take, 20,000 steps. I get a badge when I walk 500 miles. It helps me and encourages me to set goals. It rewards me when I get better. It encourages me to get better and to care about these things and to care about myself. It's the definition of personal aspiration from a fitness standpoint, but it also moves into food and tracks my weight and all kinds of other stuff. It takes something so as mundane as walking. We take that for granted, and based on that data, it's making conclusions about my life and it's speaking into my life. And I think this is one of the reasons why, and this is the only reason why Fitbit is so popular and so successful. Right? Fitbit, in the recent funding, I think they have a valuation of $500 million on counting steps. That's basically all they do, right? But the point is that it wasn't like, it's technology, right? But the magic here is in what the designers did. They took something mundane and they created something magical that speaks into our lives here, right? Wall thermostat, right? You guys know where this one's going, right? So, the Nest is all over Austin this year, right? Again, it's the same thing, right? Mundane, like when to turn on and off the heat. It's pretty mundane, right? Like, it doesn't get as mundane as that. And then if you look at their dashboard, they're making great conclusions about it, and it's aspirational. It's like, you could save more if you tried this. Try turning it down 1 degree, right? You did great last week. Look at this. Here's an expansion of your savings. You care about saving money. You care about saving the environment, right? It's taking something mundane and speaking into our lives. It's almost like both of these apps have a personality to them, right? They are advocates for us. They care about us. They're making us better. They care about making us better and improving our lives. And if you could reach that level of relevance to the user, then you will get engagement, because people love that, right? People love that. And so, Fitbit, $500 million valuation. Nest acquired for $2.3 billion. So, in conclusion, this is not just about being a better designer, right? This is not just about beautifying something, right? but it actually is very lucrative as well. Designers are building billion-dollar companies and are responsible for those types of valuations. So this is the greatest occupation in the world, and that's why I love it, right? So anyway, yeah. So I wanted to address everybody in this room and just encourage everybody here to, we do design, but we are to be advocates, right? We're psychologists because we inform and we speak into the lives of other people and make them better people as a result. And we're magicians because we create magic out of the mundane, right? And so I just would encourage everyone here to be more passionate about what you do and who you become. Always be teachable and pursue excellence in everything you do. And that's all I have. Take a few questions on any of those slides or any of those points that you have. Anything strike?
I just hadn't heard of key performance indicators before, and I'm wondering if you could recommend a resource to get up to speed.
Yeah, if you search for KPIs, key performance office. Yeah, office space. Yeah, just don't click on the office space ones. Yeah, there's a lot written about key performance indicators, and there's also a lot of people who are starting to focus on just that area and offering that as a service to companies to help them identify. Right? Did you want to talk about that for a bit?
I wanted to say,
okay.
There's Google Analytics, they have an evangelist, I don't remember his name, but he wrote an entire book. Yeah, Avinash Kaushik wrote an entire book about it that basically breaks down. Yeah, this is how to design what you're doing.
Yeah, and
there's also a really good article about like data-driven decisions.
Yeah.
Those are essentially what KPIs are, like short form. So like you find data and then you base the psychology around that data.
Yeah.
And then KPIs are just like a prettier form of like reporting. So what do you want to report? Of course, more
KPIs are more what businesses actually need to function, and your design should relate to that you're driving users or whatever it is that they're looking for to actually indicate that function. So the money that they're spending is worth it, right? So we own we were talking to George about earlier, is we own a marketing and advertising firm and work with a lot of small to medium-sized businesses. I come from an agency background, and in agencies it's very, especially agencies that work with larger businesses, so Pepsi account, we would talk to them all the time about their KPIs or their KPMs, which is key performance metrics.
Yeah.
And really, what is it that's making that budget worth it? So if they're spending $1 million with us, why are they spending that with us? So KPIs actually for small to medium-sized businesses are really helping them be able to understand why they're spending that money and then showing them the metrics of doing that. So the data-driven decisions come in from actually tracking those KPIs and being able to sell them on the fact that it's working.
And it's good for designers also, because if you start with KPIs and you come in as a UX designer, you say, I'm going to focus on this very specific thing. I'm going to increase the number of monthly active unique users by 10%, right? You can measure it before as a benchmark, and then in X number of months, you can measure it again and say, this is what I did, right? And so a lot of young designers say, well, how do I make people listen to me? I don't have credibility. They just see me as a doer, right? And I'm like, well, if you can start from KPIs and if you actually move numbers, that's when the executive staff, the founders, all the engineers, everybody is going to start listening, because they're like, wow, you're so much more than just somebody that makes things pretty. You're looking at our business and you're improving it for everybody. All boats rise with the tide, right? All boats rise with the tide, and KPIs are a way to measure the tide, right? In order to bring it up, right? So. Okay.
I run a small local display advertising, and I want to see how I can measure people seeing my ads and then responding to my advertisers. Like is there some way, right now I just display some kind of business card, the service offering, but now as I hear from you, I'm going to try more emotional outreach. But
Yeah.
What kind of KPIs can I build upon?
Now, are you the ad campaign server and manager, or are you using somebody else?
I'm the platform provider. So
To serve the ads.
Yeah, to
Okay.
serve that.
Yeah. I think you should definitely have that capability built into your platform, because not only is it valuable to you, but it's valuable to all your customers too, right? Your customers are going to downstream are going to definitely need to know like how many people viewed these versus how many clicked, what's the engagement. You know, if you have a multivariate test, like which ads are doing the best, like which ads under the same campaign, which variant of the ad is doing best, right? And so there's a lot of best practices out there in that technology as well.
It's not an online clip, it's a display ad, like I show on the screen an ad and the people who see it, how do I measure that engagement?
Where's the ad displayed?
It's in all grocery stores in Austin.
Oh, it's in grocery stores. So it's on some sort of panel.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this kind of offline viewing to engagement, and how do I build a KPI around it?
Yeah. I mean, one way that I've seen it done is basically you have to close the feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of different ways that you could try to do that, but like, you know, that's how I've seen it done, where there's some sort of promotional code or it's a QR code, or, I mean, just need to think about it, right? And come up with sort of a creative way to somehow close the loop. And I mean, that's one of the biggest drawbacks of pure display ads, right? It's really, really hard to count impressions. It's hard to track engagement and things like that. But yeah, I think if you really sat down and thought about it, you might come up with interesting ways to close that loop, or some way to provide some sort of metrics to yourself and to your customers about like how it's effectiveness, basically, right?
I have a different question.
Yeah.
Aside from a huge graphic elements kind of being a big part of UI UX, what do you see kind of happening in 2014?
In 2014?
Yeah.
Well, this is already happening. 2014
Yeah.
might already did. So one of the things I'm seeing a movement from is I'm seeing a movement from the tutorials when you land. You know those tutorials when you land, you drop in and it says swipe here. Step 1, step 2, step 3. I'm seeing a movement away from that into a more discoverability approach, where you just drop people in and you just let them discover how to use the app, or you create a way for them to get started and find early success immediately, right? In a very, very like focused way. And I think a lot of that is happening because of mobile apps. Mobile apps have very little like tutorials. They just drop you in, and there's so few options that you start just tapping around and they'll figure it out, right? And so if I used to do the tutorials all the time, right? You black out the screen, you isolate a certain area, and you have them step through that. It shows another area, step through that, and another step through that, right? But I'm definitely moving more towards, you know, if it was a more complex app, maybe create a landing page for first-time users that will just allow them to do one thing, like one element of that, in order for them to find success early. So like, say for example, Twitter or Yammer, right? You come in, and instead of showing them the entire Twitter feed and all of these option loops and all these other options, maybe just drop them in and you say something, right? Or this is your first tweet, here are a few examples, right? And then there's only open text field, one button, they click on it, and then once they click on it, you could show them the entire interface with the evidence already in there. And then by example, you're teaching them how to use it rather than like trying to like force it.
So it's kind of analogous roughly to like a video game where you start off and you have intro level where you do the basic moves
and you make it so easy for them, like they're gonna succeed no matter what, they can't die.
Yeah. And eventually get to the point where they can do the full range of moves. Kind of analogous to that.
Yeah. That's a good analogy. So yeah, I just have a feeling that in the future there'll be very few sites, or actually the successful web experiences will be more like mobile experiences, where there's no instruction, there's very little marketing content, there's very little facts. It's like how many people have read FAQs for Instagram? People don't even know they exist, right? They just try to sort of figure it out, right? And I think that's where it's moving, at least for us.
How do you feel like, and coming from a marketing perspective, how do you feel that will tie into kind of all these things that are so important to, especially websites, such as SEO, et cetera? How do you feel like that will tie in? Because content's been such a driver in that arena. What do you kind of see?
Well, that's a big question,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
But you were also saying like imagery, right? Video. Those are all things that are content now, so it's not just words.
Okay, well, let me open that up to the entire room here then. Like, where is SEO's place the next 5 years? Is it going to completely go away, or do you think it's here to stay?
I think it's evolving.
Really?
Reduce.
It's what?
It'll reduce in effectiveness.
It's reduced in effectiveness, right? So how? What do you think? What do you guys think?
Hold on. Maybe I'm just looking for a little clarity on this question. So you're saying, I think SEO is going to become more simple.
Yeah.
So I think it's evolving.
Right.
I think it's still important because you need to.
Yeah.
It's
Well, when you say simple, what do you think? Like
okay, it used to be content. It used
Yeah.
to be words.
Yeah.
People don't want to just read anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So it's moved towards video.
Yeah.
Alt images and things like that, which
Right.
is simple.
Yeah.
Right. Videos are simple. You can just click a button. Of course, the backlinking, the authorship of that is a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
But the front end of it. So I think it's evolving in terms of user experience. It's only becoming more simple.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen
Okay.
in terms of the back end of it.
Yeah.
Because I think the more simple it gets, the more complex it gets on the back
Aaron,
end.
Brandon, what do you guys think? What do you think of how do you think SEO is going to evolve?
I still think it's huge.
You think so?
too. I think it's going to.
Queries are dramatically growing.
Okay.
Hand over fist.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. So of course, Aaron's going to say he works for StumbleUpon. So Aaron, this is actually a good segue. So Aaron is our next speaker. He is the head of growth for StumbleUpon. I think some of you have heard of that site.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit, right? And he's also just one of the smartest guys I've ever talked to in some of these topics, especially around growth. If you care about growth and you want it to explode to epic proportions, this is a guy that you talk to. Lots of people want to talk to this guy and want his time. He's also got a really interesting background in politics. I'll let him talk about it, but he's an elected official in California, and he also worked as the growth hacker for the Mitt Romney campaign. So, call up here.
You want to
Come on up, yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't really hear your answer. You said you think it's gonna just explode, continue to.
Yeah, I mean, like every day, Google says that there's 20% new searches that they've never seen before. So
Every day?
yeah.
Wow.
So I think that's big.
That's a pretty big deal.
But search as
The results
as an effective tool for you to use may change because Google is moving to most searches be HTTPS now. So, all right. So that means you can't see the right. You can't see the keyword if they secure the URL. So, which means it's kind of blind traffic coming in saying not provided. So I'm going to talk about as George said. I'm gonna talk about growth and where you guys come together. I run a product team, a group of engineers and designers, and what we do is we work on growth. And so it's a very broad area, but I'll elaborate upon that further. So as George said, head of growth at StumbleUpon, started an issue advocacy firm called Lincoln Labs that advocates for liberty through technology. So we're a community of technologists, product designers, engineers, and we advocate for immigration reform, lower taxes, lower business regulations, etc. Named after Lincoln, the first data-driven president. And it's a top hat. Very modern, right? Very modern. And then, as George said, I am part of the leadership committee in a California company. So growth is, my definition is really it's moving any respective metric with scalable, repeatable methodology. So it's not like just one-off sort of experiences. It's really like getting deep inside of the product, using user base to create an organic path forward and up to the right for your product. Specifically for UX, it means, put in emotive terms, making it easy as possible for a new person to understand, to comprehend, to use the product. So really, from a designer's perspective, when you're working on the growth team, is you're just trying to make it as easy as possible for the whole funnel of the product for people to understand it. So whether it's signing up, whether it is a landing page, whether it is they're using tutorial for the first time, whether it's booking, whatever you have, right? It's very, very easy. So growth's goal is to make it as easy as possible for everybody. So I always use this graph to sort of demonstrate how growth works, and it's essentially a power function, right? So 100% of all visitors who come to your site for the first time are going to see some landing page, right? How many people of those people are actually going to go sign up for it? How many of them are going to finish? How many of them are going to go to the next step, right? So everything follows power function, right? 100% will view the landing page, 20% sign up, 5% of those will convert, et cetera, right? It follows down the line. So users over time. So the longer they spend, less users are on their site, generally speaking. So the goal of growth is to adjust the curve at different points. So when you say I'm going to optimize, let's say like the landing page, you're trying to, or let's say sign up form, you're trying to move the first top part of the funnel, right? So you're trying to say, I want to move this out further to where there are more people, there's a percentage increase if we're remaining on the site longer. But, so that's one that's called optimization. So you have an established funnel in which you're trying to convert more. The other one is called throughput. And that is where you have an established power function and you're just trying to push more people through. And so the goal of the growth team is to determine if I move this 20%, which is an optimization, so I move up the graph 20%, am I more likely to get results doing that or just pushing more people through the funnel, right? So it's an acquisition versus optimization strategy. So growth team, basically, that's all they do all day. Is they determine which path we're going to try. We're going to try to push more people in, which would be like, let's promote sharing, let's invest SEO, let's do, I don't know, display, whatever it is. And then the other one would be like, let's optimize the flows, let's make it easy to understand, something like that. And so a simple growth calculation, really straightforward. How many people do you get a day? How many people do you add that like come back to the site, reactivate? Minus churn, which is what churn is dependent upon whenever you define retention. So if it's a day, 7 days, whatever it is, multiply that by churn. Minus deactivations, those are people who say, I don't ever want to come back to this, please delete my account. So this is obviously the smallest portion of people. This is usually like, hopefully is the largest, but this is like the biggest pullout is the churn. So, and each of these has a different level of effort to move. Not all these are created equal. Generally speaking, creating new users is actually the easiest thing you can do. Most people don't think it is. It's actually top of the funnel, mainly because what are the type of metrics you look at whenever you're trying to move the top of the funnel? You're going to look at traffic and conversions, right? That's it, right? There's nothing really else to look at, right? When you're looking at reactivations, it's like, okay, how long ago were they around? What things did they do? Did they visit a couple times? Did they buy anything? You have all these like complex different metrics to look at to figure out what if it's going to work or not. And the time to return test results is also very different for each one of these, right? New users, it's instant, right? Did they create an account or not, right? They came, they left, they either converted or didn't. So you can know instantly, basically. But these are all like require lengths of time in testing, right? It could be like the churn is like how many, you need at least 2 weeks of understanding, unless you have a predictive model in the first 3 days. You need at least that test to be for 2 weeks long, because you need to know 2 week retention on your test. Same with deactivations. So that's why New Year's is so easy to move, because it's an instant response to your whatever you're doing, whatever your test is. So all that together, if it's positive, you grow. So I'm gonna go through the 4 tests 3 tests. I think 3 tests. 3 tests that I ran at StumbleUpon will show you sort of how we think about things and some lessons that that the design team learned about how do you archetype tests. So the first is so this is called scale. Scale. We have a bunch of like overrides in our project. So this is basically what you saw if someone shared something with you and you were not a user or you didn't have a cookie or something like that. So what happened was you have the content, and then we would do this overlay to tell you some more information. So this is like something written in dev, so it's obviously not pretty. But like you would first see the site, and then the overlay would appear, and then if you wanted to look at it, you say continue or register, and click the content right. So that's the default. And so we thought, well, let's make it a little bit more cleaner. Let's provide some designers love blurry photos now. So add some blurry photos on hover state, right? And texture background, right? Sexy, rounded corners, right? Rounded corners. And so a nicer black experience, but the design team really wanted to move to white because they felt white was airy. They said it feels like the product's more alive than black. Plus orange and black, it's like not every, it's not Halloween every day, right? So they wanted to move to something that was just more bright feeling, more, because the product itself is a fun product. It's not meant to be super drab and heavy like black. So results of our test where the design team was really sad. So the black one actually performed far better than the white one, right? And the main reason why is legibility, right? So if you have a really, really wide screen, most people don't put up with that. Even if it looks really nice, like I wanted the white, right? I wanted the white test to win. But people just prefer black, mainly because also our site is heavily used at night, right? So no one wants to stare at a really white screen all night. Plus black is more legible on the different types of browsers as well, because you can't really control fonts in most browsers, because we use Helvetica, which is only on Safari, I believe. These are just all we have lots of different, this is from our internal A/B testing tool. So we have Reg's or Stumble, Reg or login, blah, 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 bunch of different stuff. So generally speaking, does everyone know how an A/B test works, by the way? I don't want to assume that. Okay, so you have, this is go over basics. So A/B test, there's 2 variations. The default, which is called the control, then you have a variation. And when you have an A/B test, you have not numbers all created equal, right? So you can't, I don't think some of y'all can see this, but between each of these numbers, these are solid conversion rates, right? So 4% sample size is the size of your test, how many people are in each bucket. And you have sensitivity marks, right? And sensitivity marks, what it says is based upon your p-value, which is what confidence do you want to have in your test. We use 98% confidence. So that means 2% of all, if you run 100 tests, right? 2% will be false positives. So out of that, you have to have a sensitivity rate which says what variation in this one number will make it statistically significant. So for Reg or login, it's a 4% conversion rate over 170,000 people, which means that for 98% confidence level, it can vary. It needs to vary above 4% for it to be statistically significant. So this one overall, that means Reg or login moved at 6%, which is statistically significant. These other ones moved 25, 30, which means that these were solid numbers that were 98% confident this was a successful test.
So you kept it black.
Yes, we kept it black. I just see the next one. So what lesson I learned, what your designer wants isn't always good for users, right? Even though it looks pretty and I love my design team, you just have to accept that you are a single person or a group of minds, and the user base may extremely disagree with what you think they want. So, and I know designers, they like to think in what's the word for it? Pictures, the whole picture, right? So it's not just the pond in the picture. Engineers think of the pond. I like this pond, in this grand landscape, and I can make this pond awesome. But a designer thinks, no, if you just take the pond, you miss the whole picnic and the trees, and you just can't take the tree and the pond. It has to be the whole thing, right? So for the growth team, it does require a specific designer who can let go of that. Who can say, I can work on this one little area and make this amazing, and apply the same design principles, either learn something new in that one area, or you take the general design templates that you have and apply it to that one and keep it that way. Yeah.
So, like, when you, in your experience with StumbleUpon, did you kind of gauge user interest, like, as it happened to kind of get that data and say, oh, well, they like the black better, or other factors like that? I mean, did you?
Well, that was pretty obvious because the only thing we changed was color. So the amount of variations in solving from null was only 1, right? For that comparative test. So what we generally do is we do the whole gambit, like George was talking earlier. We do user interviews, we do product demos of new products, we do what's it called, like 1 to 10 scale ratings. We send out a survey to user, like rate these features. Or we did a verb analysis too, saying give us, out of all these verbs, which one do you associate most with StumbleUpon? And so we take a whole gambit of data to determine what we're going to test. Like, data doesn't tell you what to do next, it tells you what happens in the past. You still have to use yourself and your own mind, your own creativity to take all the information and make it into something, right? And so an A/B test is only like one, like some people think A/B test is like, you know, it's like the Bible or God. It's not. Like it only, whatever you put into it is what you get out. So if you put in crap, you're gonna get crap out. So so we had a specific hypothesis of that was like, do people want a lighter design? Like maybe that assumption, which we had a long time ago, that people mainly use it at night, or you know, the screens are, you know, really bright and high res, that people would want, you know, they would want lighter, because you know most design trends now are pretty light now, with beige, grays, and stuff. So we ended up being wrong. Like, so does that answer your question on the?
I guess I was just wondering more of your process of figuring out, you know, how you get to these conclusions of what direction to go based on user data.
Oh, well, whether or not the test went or not.
Okay, so you, like, did you do the test like during, you know,
Oh, you mean
live kind of?
Are you talking about the length of the test? Like the length of the test? Like how long do I run the test?
No, I guess just how you decided to conduct the test. Like, did you do it like, I guess live, you know, live data with exposing it to current users? Did you?
Yeah. So when the sample size says there's 170,000, 180,000, those are people in the test. Who? Yeah. So it was a live production test.
Random on the spectrum.
Yes, that's the way it works. You know, Twitter runs over 100 tests a day, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, concurrently too, which I don't really agree with.
So there's another question actually I was going to ask earlier that may relate to both of you. How often are you doing split tests?
So it depends on your sample size, like how big of tests you get. I mean, you shouldn't run the same test in the same flow, unless you have the engineering horsepower like Google, who can like manage that sort of statistical power. Like Google says, they made some quote, I think it was this a few months ago, saying like it's almost impossible to find someone in Google and who's using Google products not in a B state in some version or somewhere, because they're running so many tests at the same time. I mean, you can do that if you have 1,000 people who are working on tests, let's say, right? But if you're like a normal team size, like StumbleUpon's only 8 people. I mean, everyone is running tests in the company, but specifically for the growth team, which is anywhere between 2 to 5 people at any given time, like you only can generally push 2 to 3 tests a week. But I mean, we get, I forgot the last number, 40 or 50 million uniques a month to just our domain, right? So we have the ability where we can do that. But unless you can attain statistical significance in your test length within 5 days, I question the ability to do testing. I mean, it can guide you, right? People don't have a lot of traffic. I recommend an A/B test where just testing general can guide you in your principles, but in reality, you still have to rely on yourself as an entrepreneur and also talking to users to make your product better. Reading what other people do in A/B tests, like what Kissmetrics writes a lot, or I don't know, like another blog. So they write about their A/B tests. I write about my own. They don't particularly provide much value to use your own products, right? Because it's all dependent on like the type of users you have, the demographic, time of day, like lots of things. Not just like oh, like, you know, if Kissmetrics changes their buttons, all their buttons to green, and they say like, oh, it performs better, it should not mean you should do that to your own product. Yeah.
St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
So what tools do you use for your A/B testing, and how do you, and other tools that you use to discover why certain versions win? Because we find that when you're doing A/B testing, it's great that one version is better than the other.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's only by a small margin, you want to know why the or whatever alternate hypothesis loses.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do a number of user sessions on those different versions.
It depends on how many assumptions do you actually build up in your test. For the one I just showed earlier, the only difference was that it was a different color. So solve for the null, which is that in science you don't want to put yourself in a position to where you're promoting a specific iteration that's not valid yet. And so you want to solve for the fact that it will not be successful, so that when it isn't, which is 80% of your tests will fail, you can go back and easily understand why. Because you can get in a dangerous cycle where let's say you spend 2 weeks on building this new awesome landing page, right? And you test it and it goes bad. Well, if you spend 2 weeks on it, well, my assumption is that 2 weeks let's say you spend a lot of feature development on like, oh, we have this cool carousel now, and this video at the bottom, and you have all these user stories, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like this huge long page, landing page. If it doesn't work, you have no idea why, right? Could be the length, could be made a copy of the top stuff. Maybe it could have been, I don't think, it wouldn't be the button probably, but because like people overrate change in copy, especially like when people are at like 100% change in conversions, blah, blah, it's usually like a very nominal number change. If you're at scale, generally copy changes you're talking about like 5 to 10% maybe, like improvements. When you have a significant drop, like 25, 30% or rising, usually that's associated with a change in flow, and like users are moving different behaviors, right? So, yeah, but that's only based upon you have to like sort of do a number of tests in your own product to figure out if the drop or rise is related to visual copy stuff, which in our team is usually 5 or 10% stuff, or if it's like they could not find the button, right? The flow dramatically changed, which would be like 25, 15% drops.
So my question was a bit more around qualitative testing paired with quantitative testing and A/B testing.
Yeah.
Do you do any qualitative testing around that?
Yeah, we do user sessions and user studies, but that's only on features. Like not for if you're testing different
black versus
white. No. I'm gonna show you completely different flows in a second. But like if you're testing like onboarding flows, like all those can go through A/B testing. Feature development's harder because it's harder to predict long-term behavior in A/B tests, unless you want the test to run for a month for a brand new feature. Like let's say that Pinterest now lets you add things, or people already do it, but let's say you can add things now to Pinterest that are not visual, right? If anyone uses Pinterest, they apparently do not curate their own community because people pin things now, they're not even images anymore. But let's say they allowed that now, right? That would, in my opinion, require significant user research, user studies, user interviews, because one, the default is the feature does not exist, and B, the variation is so significant, it'd be very difficult for me as a product manager to understand exactly what's going on because it's so different, right? It's like the product's almost a completely different product. So that I would definitely invest heavily in user research, but something like what does the landing page say? We generally don't do user research in that because that's, I don't know, it's just, we feel we can gain insight into A/B testing. So we may ask some questions like, what do you think StumbleUpon does, right? And that may inform our landing pages, but we generally don't do that. Do you want to ask a question, or do you want to go?
I was going to ask you what that was.
Huh?
I was going to ask you what that was.
That's a very new, So the previous one we called scale. This one's called persistent bar. And so previously you saw that the black one won, right? So this is the black version with the whole blurred out photos. And so the next one we decided to do was like, okay, well, let's try something a little bit different. let's put the person who shared it, Matt's our designer. Matt, so he shared the page with you. It's more like metadata about the page. And when you click on see if the animation works. Come on. So when you click on come on, move up and down. So you can mess with the page, but there's like this bar they call it, persistent bar, right? This is web view too. This wouldn't be like a mobile web, wouldn't look like this. And so we tested that. And so when you click login or sign up, this form would drop over an overlay, and it would be would have this sort of halo effect. And this would be that's like the reg form. So all this would occur on the same page. And so let me go back and explain this one. So and then I didn't have the other iteration here. So there's two iterations. So this one where you could pass through a continued page, right? The second one was actually called walled garden. So if I shared a page to George, you would not be able to see the page unless you signed up or logged in. Ooh, UX. Oh, no, right? No. As a growth team, never be afraid of testing an assumption, right? Just never be afraid. So we ran that test because we wanted to see what happens, right? I mean, how do you know it's bad unless you test it? So let me go on through. Yeah, we use Keynote. We use Keynote to communicate animations to our front-end designers. Or front-end engineers, sorry.
That photo should be blurrier.
So here is the registration breakdown. So this is out of 100%. 100% of all the registrations that happened in the test, walled garden generated 289% more registrations off the baseline. You don't know where I'm going with this yet, dude. The continuum model still had a bump, right? Not as significant, but 23% increase in registrations. And the baseline only had a 50%. So you can see here, like walled garden by far won, like huge, right? I mean, 468%, right? But the nominal is not very big. But the big thing up here, the big win was logins. We had 11% increase in logins, and when you have that over a base of 7,000, that's a lot. So, but most people would be surprised what do you think we did after we saw that walled garden, which is blocking people from the content and requiring them to register, versus an overlay or like the persistent bar at the top. Like, what do you think that we chose to do? So the one you can continue, right? So is that what you're saying? The walled one or the one that's persistent? So but the iteration was so this one you could not see the content unless you register. This one you could see the content, but you still had the bar at the top, right? And this one was the default. So do we allow people to see the content or not?
Yes, I think you decided to do that.
Which one?
That you allow people to see the content, despite the data.
Despite the data, yeah, that's true.
They're still both growth.
So I decided that we would not do walled garden, mainly because the amount of effort that a user would put into to registering versus the reward, I did not see as a positive equation. I see it as a frustrating equation. Now, it doesn't mean that certain parts of the sites, we do require that, which is like you cannot stumble unless you register. Because the data show that people who stumble without registering and associating ontology to their user ID do not retain very well, right? So basically, you can be very aggressive in your testing and the way you sort of promote your product, because users have little to no understanding about what's going on when they're on the computer, right? Because they're so busy with like reading email, Facebook, and like whatever they're doing. They come to your site, they don't want to think about anything, right? So being really blunt is actually very helpful to them, because they don't really know what you do. Being super subtle and coy, they're not going to care. Because just think about how you use the internet now, or you use your apps, right? Something like goes wrong with your app for like a second, you get pissed off. You're like, why isn't this working? And you hit your phone a couple times. I mean, after 5 seconds, you're done, right? But for some reason, when we approach product, we assume that like, and this is specifically to apply to one of my product teams right now, who fell for this, was that they put in all this elaborate explanation to the products and telling like people these magical things about what StumbleUpon going to do, rather than just like, hey, we like help you find really funny stuff and like it's really easy to find cool stuff, right? They're like doing all this like grandiose explanation, right? No one's going to read that, and any of the people who were going to read it were going to convert already. And plus, you're putting people down a path of like, rather than registering and logging and going through, rather than just like trying the product, they're like sitting on this one page and just reading about it. They're like, oh, do I really want to like save and bookmark cool stuff, rather than just going and doing it. And so you're reducing the ability for people to actually retain onto your product. So understand in the grand scope of things, how much you think users are getting out of basically the calls to action that you actually ask them. So asking them to do, like everything it's a cycle of there's a trigger, there's an action that you want them to do, they receive an award, and then they invest more into the product. So it's this whole cycle that you want them to continue to do. And if your upfront action is way too expensive and the reward that they get is not very high for how much they expense, then they're not going to come back. So yeah.
In terms of data, how did you justify that decision?
In data?
Well, this whole scenario where you went with the one that data was not necessarily leading you to.
Yeah.
I understand why you did it,
yeah.
But how did you justify that in terms of data?
So they basically, how long does it take to, we based it on how long does it take people register versus how long they stay on a specific Stumble or page recommended. And so we saw that the amount of time they spent registering would be anywhere between 45 seconds and a minute. The amount of time they spent consuming content was going to be about 10 to 15 seconds.
Have you tried grabbing the registration and then incentivizing or collecting data for consequent visits later on?
You mean cooking them and then applying that to user sessions? So yes, we do that. That's what this flow is somewhat about. We have a badge, just like Twitter and Facebook have a badge. And so yeah, we cookie people. The problem is that browsers are getting really nasty on cooking. So now people are moving to even a more accurate but scarier technology, is fingerprinting. We do that. It hasn't proven to be that effective actually so far. But we haven't, to be frank, we haven't run that many tests on it. Like we've run tests on like Facebook like metadata and contextualizing their experience before they arrive, because I can take anyone's user ID in here, I can sniff that from the cookie, and then if you're logged in Facebook and then hit that in Facebook, they can send me a photo and your likes because all likes are public, right? And I can take that information and apply it to StumbleUpon because we basically recommend content based on what you like. But Facebook likes like one of the most diluted signals you could ever consume, which is why I don't want people to use it as an advertising platform. But so like there's lots of like data, and so StumbleUpon suffers from almost the exact opposite problem of Netflix. Netflix doesn't have a lot of data about you when you join. We have like, you tell us your interests, we know how long you stay on each page, we have all of the content on the page, and within that page we have like, that is like indexed against a bunch of other related pages, right? And so we look at whether you liked or disliked or shared, or commented, or you skipped over that page and we thought you should be on that page. So we have almost too much. Like we have so much data, we don't really know how to consume it and put it into a specific, like how do we apply this to people. And using third-party data, which we've tried that before, like Twitter's data and stuff. Because Twitter tracks everywhere you go, regardless of your user yet, once you clear your cookies. Like it doesn't really it has minimal impact actually, and then just asking up front, like we've done a test for well, let's just try to assume people's interests, right? It's like horrible, it's bad. When people ask you, tell them I'm interested in art. It's a completely different signal than you're just like, well, we assume you like art, right? Much higher retention when you just ask straight up front. So /submit is basically our badge flow. So when you click on a badge on any of our little icons on a website, we used to have a not so stellar experience. This was StumbleUpon's been around for 12 years, and so we have lots of technical debt. So this is one of the things we're technical debt. It was we sort of called it the Hell's Cavern, right? So it was this non-responsive page, right? Most of it was this big black, I don't know what it's called, footer, whatever. I don't even, it's not even footer because region. Yeah, region. Right? And so login was way up here.
Oh my god.
Right there, right? And there's just join for free, right? And this all our data was 20 million, we have 35 million users. So it's a super old, I think it's 2 years old. And so we ran a couple tests. This was our first test. back to the photos, right? So put in a much bigger login call to action. The goal of this page is to submit stuff to StumbleUpon. So we have these two like relevant call to action, submitting a page with your either email address or Facebook. Much cleaner design, I would say. What happened though was interesting was that these actually did worse, right? So you see that logins, remember what logins looked like in the default, right? It's that little blue, like, 10 font sign in. But look, it was like 16%. We're like, that doesn't make any sense. But like in the new one,
where's the login on the new one? Where's the login link?
Same place.
Oh, okay.
Same place.
It's just bigger.
Right? Whoops. So log in there, it's a little blue link. And then log in there, right? You would think, and this was fully responsive too. So fully collapsed, it was built on a grid system. So this other one was not. This other one would just stay as is, right? The target window on like web pages would open up and be like right here. So you had to like drag it open to sign in, right? So we didn't understand it. Like we had no idea why this was going. So we ran 5 tests. We're like, well, let's pull out maybe it's a copy. Maybe it's because there's 2 call actions. Maybe it's like XYZ. We spent a month on this. Eventually found something that worked. And this was a
Blurry photo.
Blurry photo. It's photography. Blurry photo. We added logins that if you use Facebook, would log you in straight from there, so you wouldn't have to go to the sign-in screen. And log in with email, that would be an overlay that would appear. And this one actually worked. So we moved numbers to 20%, and this was over less than a day. So we figured out that what was happening in the previous flow was that the grays at the top were people were washing over. They didn't distinguish that because the logo on the left was gray, and the login was gray, and they're both the same gradients. That people didn't see that; they thought it was still part of the branding. And they saw submit with the page with email, submit with the page with Facebook, and the people who were logging in were getting stuck in that flow. And these were just users, right? They were just trying to get in, submit their stuff. And so StumbleUpon has sort of a unique problem where a lot of the traffic coming in is logging in. It's not new users trying to sign up. We have very high self-reactivation rate. So whenever we're designing a flow, we actually have to optimize significantly for logins. And so when we put the logins up top, very easy, especially Facebook, when we log into Facebook, that we found out that there was a huge bias in this flow for logging in. You think about it, like if you see a badge on like let's say TechCrunch, you click a StumbleUpon logo, you probably already are a user, or you know something about StumbleUpon. So the bias in that flow is very much heavily logins. And so based on this, this lesson was that be careful when you're designing a test so you're not layering a bunch of assumptions in to when it fails, you have to take your team and go back through a failing test, because that is one of the biggest motivation killers of running a product team. It's like you tested this thing, you know you have to prove this flow, and it doesn't work, and you're like, I have no idea why. And you start pulling out things, it just drags on and on and on. So it's best to try to be as incremental as possible. However, that comes with a cost. If you go as incremental as possible, your results will also be incremental. So, catch point. So rules, the growth rules for UX. Users are dumb. So just assume that. Do not assume like how you approach the product, like, oh, they're gonna understand all this different stuff before they sign up. No, they don't. They don't really care. They probably heard this from a friend. They're like, I guess I'll check this out. Plus, also like with the trend about mobile landing pages being very direct, 100% agree with that. If they've already downloaded the app, they've read the store reviews or something already. So they already know about your product. You don't need to tell them about it on the mobile app first screen. So I agree, drop tutorials. Plus, the lighter your app is, as in like, size, the more likely you are to get conversions too. Most people don't think about that. And plus, if you have a really heavy tutorial up front, they can cost download time. So there is a huge techie bias, and for example, spam is, in my opinion, a perspective. It is not a end all be all, this is spam. And us as technology people, we get very upset with emails. You talk to an average user, they do not get upset with emails, actually. Go talk to, parents, grandparents, whatever, ask them how many, open up their email box. Look how many of those things you would identify as a type of person as spam. Most of them would be, right? You'd say, yes, spam, spam, spam. But they're like, oh no, they're just telling me about this thing. Like, oh, I just delete it, right? So really step outside of your view about what the product should be, and just like get, as Steve Blank says, get out of the building and talk to people. There's a reason why LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter send all those notifications. They don't just do that because they think, oh, I'm going to catch some people, right? That's not how growth works. They're providing those emails because a lot of people subscribe to them. And it may be that like I don't have any emails that come to my email account, or I don't have any notification emails from Twitter, except one was a direct message. But undoubtedly, millions and millions of people have the ones that send them for every little thing that goes on, right? So just understand where you are in that spectrum and be very open to the fact of like, people don't know why they should care about your product, so it's okay to motivate them and tell them why, hey, this is why it's a cool thing. Software null, do not be, I want this thing to win, because then it will be crushed, because you're 80% of the time you will be crushed. So just be frank that you're probably not going to be successful in most of your testing. But what I mean by successful though is you're not getting a positive movement in the numbers, but you're learning a lot, right? You're testing things that previously someone's like, oh, I wish probably would just do this, or just did this thing. And then you say, oh no, those are actually bad ideas. People are like, oh, well, I guess you need new ones, right? You need new ideas. So for the designers in the room, I sort of say to my designers, like, don't waste time on something I'm gonna throw away. So say perfection for something you know is gonna work. So we productionize at the end of testing. The user does not care if the thing is a hack together job, if it delivers the value to them, right? Which is what MVP is. People think MVP means cheap. It does not mean cheap. It means you're delivering the value proposition of what's expected, whether or not it's polished or unpolished. So we go sort of 80% of the way, and when something is successful at 80%, we then fill the 20%, which is like pixel perfect animations, blurry photos, all that different jazz. Good design performs. Design does not live in a vacuum of where I think this is awesome, so everyone will also think this is awesome, a la Path. So I know George uses Path. But so there can be useless design, and even if it's very creative. So design should perform, and because if no one's using your product, I don't know why you're in business. I need to get more slides. There we go. All right. Yeah.
This is a bit nitpicky and it's more of a comment.
Yeah.
The part where you said users are dumb.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with that. It's like an individual is smart and masses are dumb, and it's we're all supposed to be like user advocates. They're not dumb. They're just naive. They don't know what they're doing. So I don't
Yeah, I mean,
it's just really nitpicky to say I'm dumb stuff.
So I mean, yeah, if you want to use splitting grammar, that's fine. It's understanding that they're not going to spend the time what most people are trying to do when they're trying to design user education. People are not going to spend that much time on reading that stuff.
Smart users don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, why should they, right? Like, they come to this site and they heard about it, and like, why should they care about this? So, although to be completely objective, if you actually view the most commonly used passwords or most commonly used usernames, you will have
Users are dumb.
So you will think like,
wait, that's the password?
No. People use like the most common one I think is like 123 love, or like
Password.
like password love 123 sexual things, Jesus, like God, like people use really commonly phrased. And if you have a customer support engineer, they usually have a script for when people are generating password for an account of things that they exclude, right? And it's usually a list of those things, those commonly used passwords. And so if you can just read through that, and I would say it's just people are using heuristics that like, this is what I'm going to remember if I create an account, and so they're trying to make it as easy for them to like get through the systems for the experience product. So
And the flip side is that the threat isn't salient.
The threat isn't what?
The threat isn't salient of having an account accessed by a third party.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I didn't understand what you
Most
said.
people don't know people who have had horrible things happen in their lives because their account has been accessed by a third party, and so they don't think it's going to happen to them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I'm one of those dumb users. I still don't get what you mean by testing for the null. Could you?
Yeah, so it just says basically assume default is true, right? So that is because that is what works now. Just like as a PM, you're not creating what's the best way to say this? Like if you don't have a resource on hand, you don't plan on having a resource ever, right? So you don't like create these. What it does is it keeps you at sort of ground level, so you're not building a skyscraper, right? You're sort of saying, okay, I'm going to build this floor, right? And you're going to say, okay, I can build this floor, now I can build the next floor, right? And so that because most tests fail, right? So when it fails, you're not dragging yourself through the mud trying to figure out why it failed. And that's a really painful experience if you've ever had to do it.
So when you say a test fails, you mean like the B instead of the A that you want, you want to introduce a new color or something.
Yeah, new iteration, yeah, whatever it is. Yeah.
So you're saying that new iteration fails, or the test? I guess I'm confused whether you're talking about iteration failing or the test failing. Like you just don't get useful results from that test.
The test fails. It doesn't mean like you personally fail it because you learned something, right? But solving for the null means that you actually understand what you learned. Because when you fail, it can be like, let's say, if you make a new sharing experience and it doesn't work, but you added it's a new sharing UI and there's a new call to action when you open the share, and then there's 4 new channels to share with, and you can also add more content to the share. If that test fails, how do you know which one it is? Right? And yeah, you could use UI tracking, but even that's going to be really dirty because you're going to have so many different interactions in the new share UI. You're not going to actually know. It's going to be very hard to tell because then even if you have UI interaction data, which is what buttons are people clicking on in what order, you then have to extrapolate that at such a level that has to be statistically significant and align with your test results, which means you need a lot of data to figure that out.
Yeah, you've introduced so many variables that at that point you don't know what's driving the results.
So when you say you solve for the null, you're basically protecting yourself, saying, yeah, I had this idea, it may work, but I'm not going to count on it. I'm going to test it though, and if it does, great, all thumbs up. And it saves you just really, it's much more efficient. And it's also, that's what is the scientific method, is you're sort of trying to be as objective as possible. Any other questions? No? All right, we're gonna take a break, and then Brandon's going.
So we'll just take a quick 5-minute break. After the break, we've got Brandon speaking, and we have just some networking time and FaceTime with us, and we've got a special guest all the way from Australia who's going to demonstrate some of his technology that he brought with him, and it's just some crazy hologram augmented reality demo that he's going to set up. So that might be really interesting. To stick around for. So take 5 minutes. Restrooms are right there to the left, and there's a water cooler just outside on the right if you want to get a glass of water. But we'll see you back in exactly 5 minutes.
What was your hashtag?
Ginny. Oh, Ginny?
Is that what it was? G-I-N-Y?
No, Ginny.
Neither. Neither. So giant red button or red button?
Sorry, red button.
Yeah. No, that's the name of this conference that I made up. Yeah, so I'm actually just an advisor to startups.
Ask them to
and
non-UX?
In UX, yeah. UX and
they don't mention any testing there.
You work in testing?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I use it all the time. And I recommend people using it too. What do you do there?
I'm the head of business development.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, we work with a bunch of agencies.
Okay.
Yeah. Happy to figure out ways that we can work together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm still sort of building up this idea, this concept. I'm gonna do a big one. I got 200 people. but the link in the Eventbrite went to the wrong hotel. So I kept thinking with the name, like something, and so next year I'm gonna make it a lot bigger, and I might do 2 or 3 conferences a year, and I think when I get to that range,
So what's your background before that?
Yeah, so you weren't here for when I started out.
No, because of rain.
Yeah, so I'm the serial founder. So I started PayPal, founding team at PayPal a long time ago. I started doing front-end development.
With Max?
Yeah, with Max and Peter. And guys. Well, I was like a foot here, so I didn't found the company with them, but I worked with them all the time.
Yeah. Who's the guy that's now up in New Mexico? Who's like
Yeah.
Designers who like to operate
Tall guy, marketing. What's his name? You know him?
Yeah. Blanking on his name.
What's his name?
Like we don't.
When he was in the Bay Area, we were neighbors.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then he moved to New Mexico and became a.
Yeah. I know. I remember him. I could do that. So what's his name? His
It's like not Brian.
Still maintain
oh, it's gonna bug me now. I'm gonna have to figure it out. David Wallace.
Yes.
David Wallace. I know him well.
But one day he came up to me. He's like, "Lev, moving to New Mexico," and because he was doing just like reserve police officer training in Bay Area.
Yeah.
And he just like that's what he wanted to do. He like did ride-alongs.
Yeah, that was a crazy switch right now.
Yeah, from marketing to being a police officer.
Yeah. How big is your testing?
75 people.
Okay, where are you guys based?
Mountain View.
Oh, okay.
Where are you based?
I live in LA, but so I co-founded a bunch of companies after that, including VMware.
Okay, with Jeff?
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't Jeff also a co-founder? Or maybe I'm getting who's the guy started CoTab?
No, James Patterson. James Patterson was came a little bit later.
Okay.
He was actually started as a developer and then moved to head of product.
Yeah, because he came in and pitched us for CoTab.
Yeah, you guys use
We've tried it. We use Yammer. We use whatever Chatter.
Yeah. Do you guys do any translation?
We do.
Okay. You guys already use
I mean, we know that we're
we partner with things, so we can do it ourselves. We use a number of different companies.
So my next company is a translation platform, it's like Smartly.
We should partner.
Yeah, I'll show it to you guys. You guys are already using.
Well, we just no. I mean, they're one of the many partners. We have like a partner program.
Right. Oh, okay.
So they like we just don't know. They came to us and were like, hey.
Yeah, so we're
how many languages do you use testing it now? It seemed pretty big.
Yeah. Well, officially I think it's like 30, but I think the core panel is probably 7 in the under an hour that we say.
Yeah.
And then 30 takes a little longer.
Hey Aaron, you work at usertesting.com.
What?
You work at usertesting.com.
Oh, you do? We use y'all.
Development. Really?
Yeah, we use you all the time.
So that's about what qualitative stuff you have.
Oh, I don't need a card. Well, I take a card. But yeah, we already use y'all.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if I can help in any way. Actually, I used to run business development for the cloud group at Yahoo. And so we tested all the different tools. But trying to remember her name. She was like blonde firecracker, former head of product. That's StumbleUpon.
Former head of product. I mean, we had another blonde hair one. She was Brenda.
Yeah, Brenda. Okay.
Yeah. So she was in product. She was director for a while. And now we have an so she was a firecracker back then.
Yeah. She told a bunch of VPs off all the time.
She's very good.
Yeah.
Are you just here for the
and
She's really good at
So I think she does Salesforce.
Yeah, it's definitely.
We do. I think mobile team uses user testing.
Yeah, but like we have a team of PhD researchers, so like ping me if you want to like expand what your goals are.
Yeah, I think we have an enterprise account. Something like that. Those larger accounts. I mean, so we use it pretty heavily. That's me.
Corporation pays for it. You just kind of go to whatever.
Hey, Scott.
Hello.
Good to meet you. Yeah, excellent. You're the user testing guy.
Yeah.
I'll give you my card for it. I don't, but I keep hearing about it. And however, it may be the case that we do. So as we launch this product later this year. So it's good to give out your own card.
Yeah, I know. I can give you someone else's card.
Yeah. Fantastic. 415, so it's based here. Or Bay Area, of course.
Yeah.
Bay Area. Yeah, cool. I'll be back there in a couple of weeks, so good to check now, but also possibly because what we're doing is like,
I do actually work
if I
at a
compare it
couple
to transport,
I'm with a company called Christine.
it's like going from horses to cars. We're going from 2 to 3.
Yeah.
So-called holograms.
No, we're just a startup. And we do. Basically,
So I'm not sure how it will fit. It's in Australia.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean,
basically,
so this is
years
the
in the
That's a great good thing.
outside postal network is so basically,
yeah, exactly. The most isolated city in the world.
our application on a tablet, a browser, and you would have a list of all the people wearing glasses throughout the hospital, and be able to pop in every
Yeah,
So, no, so our two founders, Kyle,
I'm curious.
Kyle, I was hey, I'm Marcus. George, nice to meet you.
So you mentioned great work because it just focuses I kind of like you said, it's just
Almost 7 years.
I always like it more and more. Another segment of, I think the first few times was okay, we'll connect us.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I like something.
Are you good? Yeah, I'm good whenever. I get a little joke, don't worry. Okay.
Yeah. The last time I was there, one of the funny surprises that I had was like,
Are we going?
Yeah, that was
So that
and like, one, it was like this, LA area, but also like, there, like every trail we went on, there was like signage, and like we stopped. On our trail, like my whole
Very data driven.
Eric making me cry.
I'm not very data.
That was like
You'll be crying by the end of this presentation, I guarantee you.
Yeah,
Can I, whenever you start crying, we're gonna film that.
Yeah. Dude, I would
Wait, keep it second.
Dude, I would have paid to hear that talk at the real South by. I'm glad I didn't have to. Good stuff. Am I just going, or are you saying something? Just go for it. All right, here we go. All right, listen up.
Where is this?
Wait, so I guess I'll
Oh yeah.
introduce.
Oh wait, I'm supposed to.
Oh, okay.
I'm supposed to.
Okay.
All right. So Brandon is one of those unicorns that people talk about, right? The engineer, designer, founder. He's also, most importantly, dad. He has 2 little ones. He's also really good at CrossFit, which is CrossFit. So if you're gonna start to be on your CrossFit, join the cults. Only requires a blood sacrifice and 10% of your annual salary. And so Brandon has he started multiple companies. He also started his own finance firm, right? And grew that until he was 30, and then what happened in 2008. Lots of great things happened that year. And so then he moved into technology and started learning how to code, started learning how to design. And built a number of products. One of them actually got acquired recently, and now he is a VC. So, right?
Yeah,
VC, right?
I'll go over some of the details.
So he has money. So if you have a startup, and
That's good, Aaron.
they can move on now. We're gonna hit me up later. So, Brandon.
Thanks, man. All right. Awesome. The pre-presentation applause. I'm excited about that. Okay, let's get down to business. I came here to talk about blurry photos. I'm a full stack hacker enthusiast for any of you who know what that is. Just kidding. That's not what we're doing at all. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to give a talk called Kick Your Freeloading Idea Off Your Brain Couch and Get It to Work. And so, as Aaron mentioned, I'm a husband and dad first and most importantly, and then I kind of build myself as operating somewhere between venture capital, design, UX, and code, and hopefully that'll make a little more sense as we kind of get going here. But the premise of this talk is that the majority of people have ideas they're not doing anything about, right? In fact, when I polled some folks about 2 years ago, 86% of people said they had some idea for a product or service that they've taken no action on yet. And so when I started to think about this talk and figure out what I wanted to go over, I mean, George's going to cover UX and Aaron growth, and these guys are great, right? So what could I do to supplement what they're doing and not be redundant? And so I thought maybe I'd come at it a little bit of a different way and kind of come from my own unique experience. And so about 2 years ago, I gave a talk called Getting to the Try, aimed at helping entrepreneurs get ideas out of their head by overcoming 3 common obstacles. Those being the fear of failure, time constraints, and feelings of inadequacy. And so since I gave that talk, the landscape for this, for getting your ideas, kind of kicking them out into the wild, has only improved, right? Accessing online education, learning new skills is easier. It's easier than ever to get early stage capital now with the Jobs Act and Title III funding, crowdsourcing, all that sort of thing. Powerful trends, the Internet of Things, you know that, the rise of the bottom billion for anybody that's read Abundance. And as you know, startup costs are down next to nothing. And so my hope is that I can inspire you all to leave a group of creative people closer to doing something with that idea that's been rattling around your head. And so I mentioned I wanted to kind of come at this from my unique experience. And so let me tell you a little bit about my background so you know who's talking to you here. I was born in 1978 as a handsome young fellow, as you can see there. Why are you laughing? That's very handsome.
CrossFit on there, dude. CrossFit.
And I spent most of my childhood in New York up until about 8th grade. And most of that time in New York was spent being jealous of this guy, Richie Sancho, who was my neighbor. Richie played the drums, he sang and played the guitar and rocked a skinny tie way back before anybody else did. And so he was very popular with the ladies. My journey was a little different in that I was a small, kind of goofy kid, and so I got into sports super early. And that was sort of my MO until I moved to Texas in 8th grade. Weighing at about 4'11", 105 pounds. For anybody that played sports in Texas, if you walked into a tryout looking like that, you were on the B team immediately. So it was about that time I had to start thinking about what else am I good at. And so I started to make stuff at that point. I started getting kind of the entrepreneurial bug. So back then I was making flyers and passing them out in the neighborhood, giving them to people for trying to get art lessons at like twice minimum wage. And I did a bunch of stuff, through all the way through to college, ending kind of with help me pay back my studentloans.com just down the road here. I did at UT, which didn't earn $1, but got us on News 8 Austin, if anybody knows what that is. So that was a big deal. So I graduated from UT, and shortly after found myself as a businesser. doing business things in a suit and tie. I went to work for one of the leading financial services firms in the country as a financial advisor. I did this partly because I couldn't find a job. It was 2000 and not a lot of people were hiring and advertising. Partly because I thought this is what life was supposed to look like at this stage for me, right? Like I was graduating, getting married, and I thought, okay, it's time to go in the suit and tie and go work in an office. This was a good experience for me. I built a successful practice. It managed about $100 million. I was very early on put in a management track. Things were like super great there. I did well, got really comfortable, but for anybody that's an entrepreneur, you know what you do when you get comfortable. At 30, I hit eject and said, I want to go do something else. So partly because I disagreed with some of the stuff that was going on in the industry, mostly because I wanted to get back to making stuff. Now, about this same time, I became a dad. It was one of the best experiences of my life. So good, in fact, that about 9 months later, I decided to do it again. And so some 15 months later, I had 2 children under 15 months old. And so there I was, 30 years old, an insecure kid, grown up, with serious demands on my time, attempting to do something that I was woefully unqualified to do in going to do startups in the tech world. That said, the next 5 years were pretty good for me. I taught myself how to code HTML and CSS. I learned Ruby on Rails. I worked as a UX consultant for clients like Michaels and Travelocity. Worked as a front-end developer for companies like Travelport and Pure Discovery. I wrote a book. Weird. Launched a few products, 2 of which had exits. And you're probably wondering what this slide has to do with any of that. None, nothing. It's a picture that my son drew of the Ninja Turtles, but it's really awkward to read off your resume. Have something on the screen, so I didn't get that up there for you. But the first product that I launched was a rate and review website where people could go and rate and review financial advisors. I shut that down about the time the attorney started calling and my daughter was being born. I thought maybe something a little less disruptive would make sense. This is the CrossFit tracking app that I launched and was recently acquired. Did pretty well. I had a task management app, and then more recently I did kind of this platform for small businesses to create websites and so on. So I tell you all that to have a better understanding of kind of where I am. I haven't had the enormous life-changing exit from any of my ventures, but the entire process I went through has really shaped where I am now. And so I am a little bit of a black swan theorist in that when people talk about their successes, it's hard to kind of say, well, that's going to be the mold that I take, right? Because there's a lot of variables that go into that. But I also think that people who have gone through something that ended up in a better place sort of have an obligation to share what they think impacted that. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do over the next couple bits of advice as we go here. To be clear, all my advice is for this stage, from your brain to making it into something. Most of the stuff at this conference and in your Twitter feed is about that stage, right? Which is optimization and all that. But I'm here. I want to get you to a place where you can worry about those things, if that makes sense. All right, so let's jump in. First thing is stop putting yourself in a bucket. I don't know how many times throughout my entire career I've heard, you know, I'm a design guy, I'm not an engineer. I'm an engineer, I'm not a designer. I'm a creative, I'm not an analytic. We kind of have this compulsion to say we're good at one thing by like totally excusing something else. And I think to start making progress or materializing our idea, we have to understand that we can be good at lots of things. And we can get better at things that we're not so great at. We don't need to be experts at everything, but acquiring enough skills to sort of get the idea out. Your job, the first job of getting your idea going is to create momentum behind it. Don't build a team, right? Everybody says build a team, but at this stage, remember, we're way back in the life cycle of your idea here. Go ahead.
Usually people say build at least 2 people team.
Sure.
What was your opinion?
Yeah, I think if you can first worry about making your idea something that you can sell to somebody else, you'll be in a way better position to bring on a co-founder. If it's your idea that you have in your head, you've worked out all the possible scenarios in which it can be great. And then transferring that is important. So I've done that, right? Like I've gone out and said, oh, I'm gonna go get the technical co-founder and so on. It seems great in the beginning, but you have to really make that sell and they have to be really invested to make it worthwhile. I've had more success when I say, instead of here's my idea, here's what I've done, and it has a little bit of momentum. What do you want to come and be on board? That makes sense. And we can get back to that. I cover that a little bit more. But this is a little bit provocative, right? Don't build a team. I'm not saying this is like all advice. I'm just saying, consider trying to do as much as you can yourself. And don't get me wrong. At some point in the life cycle of your idea, especially when you're going to get funded, you're going to need to have a world-class team. But I'm talking about getting to that place. Okay, it's okay to hope. Like, I think we have this, like, maybe a byproduct of overprotective parents telling us, like, don't get your hopes up because you don't want to get hurt. At least for me, like, my dad was always telling me, if it doesn't work out, it's okay, it doesn't work out, it's okay. I'm like, stop, just tell me it's going to work out, right? And then be there if it doesn't. So it's okay to hope. Life's really hard. Like, we should get really good at hoping for things. Hope is important because when you hope in something, you create action. Those actions create wins, and wins are sort of the heartbeat of momentum, right? Wins have a really cool way of starting small and growing. So start with a line of code, a sketch, a note, anything, just to sort of get the ball moving. Get in the habit of not only creating wins, but acknowledging them. Momentum is greater than ideas. Momentum closes sales, it interests investors, it gives you negotiating power, kind of some of the stuff we were talking about. Momentum can make decent ideas look great, and so creating momentum is kind of the best thing you can do. It rallies other people, both users, partners, investors around your idea. If you don't believe me, this is the next thing I'm working on. It's called Pants Chair. We're disrupting both the pants and the chair market. So does anybody want to be involved in this with me? You're in. What if I told you that I'm going to be on Shark Tank with it? We've got 1,200 pre-orders from QVC and commitments from 2 well-known angel investors. That's complete bullshit, but everybody in here just kind of took a pause, right? Like, well, maybe that's right? That's the point. Like, all this is momentum right here. It can make crappy things look pretty good. So take chances. This is a tweet that I sent from my bed. At what time is it? It's like 3 in the morning or something. 2:25 a.m. I'm like scrolling my phone, which you're not supposed to do now because of that little plant next to the iPhone thing. See that? One plant didn't grow. Then tweet me later and I can get that for you. But so Web App Storm, if you're familiar with that, says, does anybody have any innovative ideas for totally new web apps? And so I just said, just launch that. Like, that's 3 words. And that got me 8,000 users on that app because they covered me and then Lifehacker covered me and whatever. So like the smallest things can make a big difference, and I literally sent them from my bed just taking a chance. Like, maybe I could have said, oh, maybe I should craft that better. I should probably capitalize the J, right? Or maybe explain what the app is or whatever. I was like, what the hell, I just sent it, right? So take chances because sometimes they pay off. Learn to work in small bits. So I told you as a dad, like the biggest things, I got 2 young kids, like always demanding my attention, which is awesome. But prior to that, I would sit down and like, okay, this is my task for the day. I'm gonna knock out the entire thing. I got 3 hours uninterrupted time. Let me get into the zone. That went away. And so a lot of the times, if these are your ideas you're working with on the side, you've got to find ways to kind of get in and get out of them quickly. And so for me, that meant not trying to do too many things, just work on one thing until it was complete. So I knew if I had 15 minutes where I was in that one thing, right? So work in small bits. Don't do business plan, do math. Business plans are for small businesses. You know, at this stage, you're just asking, look, how much is it going to cost to create my product? How many people are going to use it, and what would they pay? You're evaluating potential here, not projections. Later on, you can get into their stuff, but don't just in your head, is there potential? And that's important. Don't overlook that, because I did that too in some of the stuff that I did. So you're looking for potential. Don't complicate things. I'm super guilty of this. Like, I think about something, and then I'm like, well, what if I did this? And then that requires an explanation and some research and dependencies and then a distraction. So a couple times a day, ask yourself, is this the most simple thing I'm doing? You can set alerts and reminders to do that. Progress over perfection. Stop saying you're busy. We do this, right? This is like, every time you ask anybody, it's like a funny game, like, how's everything going? Busy. My mom's a teacher. She doesn't work 3 months out of the year. I ask her if she's got like, I'm really busy. I'm like, Mom, it's summer, you're not doing this. So we have this compulsion. I think we have to say that we're busy because we come from a generation where activity equaled success, right? Like, put in long hours, get there, start the coffee pot and shut the lights out on the way out. But here's the truth. We're not always busy. If you are super busy, stop talking about it and get unbusy, because unbusyness creates productivity. The more time you can spend not doing stuff and thinking about it, relaxing, going through problems, thinking about what's next, that creates productivity. And so try to have downtime and be productive versus just saying that I'm busy. It's a really hard thing to do. Startups don't give badges for busy though, so. So be a jerk about your time. For some people, this is harder than others. But everybody else's job is to take your time. Your job is to play defense, right? So come up with strategies for that. If somebody wants to meet with you, be like, sure, just send me an agenda, purpose of the meeting, and who's going to come. put it in their core, right? Develop tactics to do that. You gotta have thick skin for this though. You always hear like the power of a no, power of a no, power of a no. That's really important, but putting it into practice is tougher. You do have to have thick skin. I know because I've worked really hard at this. It's easier with kids, right? Because you can blame a lot. Like I can't with the kids, I can't. But if you do this successfully, you'll know because people will tell you that you're not paying attention to them, or Brand's hard to get a hold of, or he's those sorts of things. But don't pay attention to the people that don't matter, but do pay attention to the people that do matter. So Dustin is a guy I used to work with, and so he saw me every day. We worked out together, and you don't hear these as much of the time as you hear the Brandon's hard to get a hold of. But he sends me this message, admiring the building, blogging, tweeting, crossfitting, family time that you do. Keep trying to find the balance myself. Sorry, random, but keep it up. So like that's enough to keep me going. Right? So I know that I'm not being everything to all people because I'm working on all these things that I'm trying to get done. But somebody that really knows my priorities just gave me a nod. If you're not getting these, then maybe check your strategy a little bit. So be visible and create relationships. So you guys should get a kick out of this. The first investment the first investment that I ever got in one of my ventures was a guy that I never met, that I met through Twitter and saw some of the stuff that I was doing. This is our private DM message, and this is my sales pitch to him about how much we needed to get. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Let's say we call it 225 because that's how much I can squat 20 times. That worked. So
Is it 220?
It's 275 now. But yeah, so be visible and create relationships. I like to follow the last slide about being a jerk with your time up with this. Like Twitter and social networks are a great way to meet people with low interaction, but create relationships that can actually manifest into something. So don't be shy there. Eat well and go outside. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but the better you eat, the more energy you have. I did the paleo diet, if you've heard that, for about 2 years. And I was never sick during that time. I stopped doing it. I've been sick and have nearly as much energy. Go outside. Vitamin D is super important to stay energized. Don't underestimate how much impact this can have on your life. This became a necessity for me with 2 kids and trying to get done everything that I wanted to get done. So it's a big part. Pursue fitness. Now, this is not the type of fitness that would find you on a treadmill reading a People magazine, like slightly out of breath, right, for 45 minutes. I'm talking about the kind that pushes you to learn things about yourself, to learn what it is to be uncomfortable, to on a daily or regular basis understand that you can do more than you thought you could, because that model is what you need for your brain to work in getting your idea out, right? Fitness is a super controllable way to do that. Fitness for me became such of a mindset. So did anyone even heard of CrossFit here? Okay, great.
Everyone should.
So everything's for time or for reps, right? It's all like a competition. And so there's just like 3, 2, 1, go mentality, and you're doing stuff. It was so ingrained in me that I went and put something in the microwave and put it on 3 minutes, and then I went back to the sink and the dishwasher was full, and I was like, I wonder if I can get all the dishes out before that goes off, right? So that's like a stupid small example, but if you engage in these types of events, they teach your brain to think in the correct way and teach you how to overcome obstacles. So consider triathlons, 5Ks, CrossFit, whatever it is.
Who is that?
That's my wife.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
My wife's a CrossFitter.
Yeah. This is a little bit harder, but I think it's important, getting a flexible job or working from home. My personal opinion is that most people's jobs can be done in about half the time that they allocate towards it. So, people hate to hear that, right? But I really think that's the case. But we have this compulsion to kind of to spend time networking. For me, I was able to work from home and get almost sometimes more done for the company because I was so interested in getting everything done so I could get to my stuff, but I controlled my time. So to the extent that you can do this, it can make a big, big difference. Redefine success. So when you know this, the headlines, TechCrunch, everything's filled with superstar entrepreneurs and huge exits and so on. But it doesn't have to be that, right? There's plenty of great outcomes that don't end up that way. It can be a new job, better life balance, more confidence. Heck, simply getting the idea out of your head and trying it and having it fail can be a success in and of itself. So for me, my whole thing, I thought, okay, well, I'll quit being a financial advisor because I hate 6-figure incomes and easy life. And I'll go swing. I used to say things like, yeah, I mean, you can make $250,000 as a financial advisor, but you can't make like $50 million. So that's why I'm gonna go try to do that. And then after 5 years, like, well, I didn't make $50 million. Now what? But for me, redefining success is like, what else could it be for you? And personally, I always thought that, okay, well, I'll go sell the big company and then I'll go back and I'll donate my time to helping entrepreneurs kind of figure out what they want to do with their dreams and help them advise them a lot of the stuff that you're doing now. But God kind of worked it out different for me in that after these 5 years, he's landed me in a position where I'm doing that anyway. So right now I work for Disruption Corporation. I'm the vice president of operations there. We have like 3 arms to the business. We create tools for entrepreneurs, analytical tools, the community stuff that we do. We have a content and educational resources kind of branch through newsletters and stuff. And then we actually have a venture capital fund that we're investing in post-seed, post-seed pre-A companies that have some sort of traction. So because I hit that reset button 5 years ago and got all my ideas on my head, I'm actually doing what I wanted to do regardless. And so it's been a good ride for me so far. So you can learn more at the website, newsletter. I said we're currently investing in those types of companies, and that's it. And the big point is the most impactful thing that I've done wasn't magic. I just simply committed to, if I had an idea, testing it and getting it out there. So happy to take any questions that you have. I'd try to get through that quickly since Aaron fell asleep.
I was so intrigued. My head.
Sorry. Now I'm gonna play a song. Yeah.
Did you did advertising at YouTube?
Yeah.
Same here.
Did you? What?
Creative.
I went media.
I did the interactive media.
Yeah. They didn't have interactive media. Oh, they were just starting or something.
Yeah.
They
still don't really.
Yeah. Like I got out and the world immediately said your degree is irrelevant. Hi, social media. Yeah. It was cool though. It was a cool track. Went to art school for a year prior to that. That was the only way I could get out in 5 years. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I do a small startup on building apps for e-commerce stores online through Shopify e-commerce.
Yeah.
And some days you're encouraged by the installs, but sometimes there's not that many installs. You're like, I'm really playing a small market. Is it even going to grow enough to succeed? So how do you, run yourself to say, okay, this many installs, this many.
So I think your question's about doubt, right? Like, so I'm assuming your business plan is solid and you believe in it.
Right.
And you're asking, what do you?
How do you know if it's really a small market?
How do you know the market size?
Right.
That's for you to know. You gotta figure that out. Do research. Like, you have plenty of resources like that. Have you guys got any comments to that, Aaron?
One way is you look at global searches on it's either the ad tool or webmaster tools. One of those. Ad tool, yeah.
Yeah, it used to be the Google keyword tool, and they took that away.
It's completely gone.
Yeah, they just use ad tool. New global searches.
Yeah, but if your question is like, what do you do if you have your business plan, you feel confident in it, and then, like it's not lining up, and you have doubt? I mean, that's sort of a different answer. That's just about motivation.
Yeah, to me, if you ask that question to me, if I were a VC, one of the things that I'd be thinking about is, are you trying to build the carriage before the horse, right? You hear a lot of people saying that, and basically what it is are you trying to build a solution for a market that is not big enough, right? And I think in your case, I mean, I've heard what you're doing. The market is like, it's big, it's huge, right? It's a really huge market, but like, remember I was talking about needing to be the contextual expert in your area. And that's definitely one of the things that you need to know and be able to answer with real data and research and backing, especially before you start talking to VCs, right? So I don't think that information is very hard to find. Like when you look at, like you could look at pitch decks. Like if you look at Andreessen Horowitz actually has some really good examples on their website. And they'll have pitch decks, and if you search on SlideShare, you can find some really good early pitch decks. Like you could actually find the Airbnb early pitch deck where they're asking for $500K for their company. And so you can look at pitch decks, and a lot of times pitch decks will one of the slides in your deck always has to be about market size, right? The overall market size, and basically what sliver of that market you believe is yours. If you had 100% penetration. And then you make an assumption for what percentage of penetration you're gonna get, and that'll be the ceiling for your revenue, right?
Yeah, but I don't think it needs to go much, I don't know how you really want to get. I think he's right, and it doesn't need to go much further than, is the market size big? Because after that, I don't really care about what you tell me about penetration. I want to know about traction.
Yeah.
Right? At that point, like, what do you, show me your way you're growing and stuff like that, because the rest of it's could be anything. I don't know if we're answering your question now, we're just talking. That's good. Yes, sir.
So it seems like you're kind of getting about, like, once you have this really idea you're passionate about, you just learn everything you can to solve this problem and get the momentum. And that seems to contrast with, like, kind of lean, like that trend of lean development where you test, you create like a really small minimum viable product and like test and test and test, or even before you even create something, just go out and survey with people, but like before you even like develop your idea. Like, how do you feel about that?
I don't see how, and maybe I explained it wrong, but I don't see how it contrasts, because I'm a fan of the lean. Like, all I'm saying is, I don't care if it's a line of code or a test or whatever, start trying to create some momentum behind your idea. I would agree. I'm not advocating, if I said this, I didn't mean to like go spend 6 months researching stuff and then build it. I'm saying move towards that lean process. Now, like, what's keeping you from doing the user interview? What's keeping you from, coming up? He just did a second ago where he did the animation in Keynote. Like, everybody in here can create a user interface prototype in Keynote if you spend a little time. Go out and test that, right? Would somebody use this? Would somebody use? Definitely a fan of that.
Okay.
So I'm assuming a lot of people would be pursuing these ideas in addition to their full-time job during the day. How do you manage that, right? Like, how do you manage being passionate about your personal side project, but at the same time having an obligation to your employer during the day?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good, and you have to do that respectfully and ethically. When I said get a part-time job, but I'm assuming that the first part of that is get your work done that you need to in your commitments for that. Now, after that, right, let's say it takes all day. I mean, my day used to look like spend the entire day doing what I had to, come home and be dad, get the kids in bed and everything, get the kids in bed again, and then another time. And then I would just get on the computer, and really I think the passion is the answer, right? If you have passion, you'll stay up late and you'll work on it. But also, I had to have achievable goals. Like, I get really frustrated in the beginning when I would sit down and try to start coding something or learning code, and I couldn't figure it out, and I would leave it. Like, I had to stop saying, well, I want to launch this tonight. It had to be like, well, I just want to get the page to refresh and there not to be an error screen on it tonight. And tomorrow I'm going to work on this next piece. So there's 2 parts of the answer: flexible job, passion and commitment, and the third part is red wine. Box wine. Box wine. Yeah. It's 2009 for me. Picture of that.
Well, I think the other thing is you learn how to be a lot more efficient. Because to your point, and as someone who, both of us did this for 2.5 years where we had a full-time job and then owned a company, you really learn that you're programmed to work from 9 to 5, but you really don't need to work from 9 to 5. And there's so much more you can do with your day. And so, actually, the people that I worked for were very happy because I would get all my work done early, and I mean, I could do what I need to.
So you would work until 2 and then leave?
I would, no. I got more work from them, but it would be to where I was ahead of everything that I was doing, so I could actually leave at 5 instead of staying till like 7 or 8 to finish. So working 60 or 70 hours. At a large agency, I could work 40 hours and get a lot more done.
Yeah, and I think the key, a lot of people start that. A lot of people say, okay, well, I'll stay up tonight and work on it. I'll do this next little bit, or I'll do this on. The key is getting the momentum behind it, because when you get momentum starting to build, you want to get back to the screen. You want to get back to the screen. So you have to get involved in that sort of cycle as fast as you can. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
When will you kill your idea?
When do you kill your idea? That's a really good question, because I've done this poorly twice. Where the worst place you can be is with a mediocre idea, right? Because then you're keeping it alive and you're paying money for it. So I would say, as soon as as the reasons you built it prove false, or you lose your passion for it. So as soon as your thesis goes wrong, I'm not talking about little problems along the way, but your initial thesis, it's probably time to move on. or you're not feeling it. Now, I'm again talking about the super early stage of this. Later on in the process of life cycle, you got to battle through some of that stuff. So yeah, I've done that poorly with two of mine. That task management app has like 10,000 users, and at the most, I think they paid $3 a month, and then we just made it free for everybody, and now it's just hanging around. So if anyone wants to buy that, let me know.
What are some tips that you kind of use to push and get through in terms of momentum? So how would you remind yourself, or are there any unique things that you did to kind of help you get through that?
So that's a tough question because I've tried a lot of that. Like, there's a slide I had the other day with like Rocky giving this speech. Like I've tried all like I'm gonna put the aspirational thing that I want on there, a picture of the house on it. I've done none of that works for me. You know, creating the next win, getting as many wins as I can, just over and over and over again. I hate going to bed without a win, right? So it has to, like, whatever it is, I sit down in the chair and I say, okay, this would be a step in the right direction. I'm gonna get there tonight and then call it night. So that's a tough question to answer. I think momentum answers it. Yeah. But I had a hard. I've never been able to pin, you know, my sight on something long term and say, I'm going for that. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you like high level walk us through like how you, because you're a CrossFitter, and so you probably identified like a need for an app for CrossFitters, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how it went. And then what was the process like developing it and then getting it out there for people to adopt and then getting the right people to see it?
Yeah. So specifically on that one, I started logging them on my blog early on. This whole behavior annoys me now because everybody does that, like they post their videos, but I was so doing that. So I was on my blog doing it, and I was like, why hasn't anybody made this app? Like everybody takes pictures of their workouts, and everybody logs stuff, blogs about it, tweets about it. I was like, I'll do that. Now I had not coded a thing in my life, so I went to the Ruby on Rails, the like tutorial to make a blog, and the initial version was like a blog with multiple authors, and then I just branded it like to look like that. I made the initial version of it. I sent some messages to friends, but then my initial like proof of concept was I went and signed up for some Twitter follow app, looked for people with the word CrossFit in their bio, and followed 1,000 of them until it didn't let me do it anymore. And then I got signups, and then those people said it'd be cool if, and so I just went in that process back and forth night after night, and then it just sort of happened. It kept going. Now that was a bad move actually because I never tested early on if that thing could make any money, and so like it was a long time before I figured out the business side of it. But my initial test for usage. So that was that. The other one, well, that answers your question. Anybody else? Why don't you?
Now I want to know, how did you make money off of it? What was the business?
We had a ton of users that are like highly engaged. I mean, it was a pretty decent amount. We tried everything like ads, and but it keeps growing. Like I ended up being the top 1, 2, or 3 results on Google for most workout searches for anything related to CrossFit. And then a company out of Finland was doing the same thing, but actually getting into the online building space for like charging the boxes that they call them gyms boxes, charging the gyms. Like all the processing payments and stuff. They wanted all the users basically in the United States because they wanted it to move over. So we kind of got to the point where we think we could have monetized it. We did some tests on paying users. We lose a bunch, but I didn't want to really do that to the community anyway. It was kind of a different thing for us. But it got to the point where we started not working on it as much. So they were interested. Thank goodness. Yeah.
What are things that you did to balance your life and also pursue your dreams?
Balance your life and plus your dreams. 2 things. One is create that other app, Taskk, because that was supposed to answer that question, which was like, I have all these things that I want to do, all these things that I have to do in only a limited amount of time. So if I've got 8 hours in a day, what should I be working on to accomplish both those things? So like I would have lists where you could like say, this is a work list, this is a home list, these are the tasks, you could order them, drag and drop, and then they all had time associations, and then our calendar would automatically fill your day with the highest priority items. And so you got this like super efficient way of accomplishing everything. So to answer that question, I built an app. Which also goes against the don't complicate it rule. Because since then, I've learned that that app doesn't really solve that problem for me, to be honest. That's just a super tough thing to do. And I think that having your priorities solid in your life, for me, God, family, you know, everything else pretty much comes after that. And then resetting, the thing about the wins, like, that's why at night when I end on a win, like they always say end the golf game on a good shot, right? Like end on a win and then go to bed and then start again the next day. Don't get frustrated by the process as much as you can. And know what's the priority alignment helps you know what's important. And the minute I start getting mad at my kids because they're not in bed so I can work on my side project, like that's a timeout. Plenty of other reasons to be mad at them. Does that answer your question? I don't know if that's...
Is there anything that you know that you along the way that you have automatically made in your life such a way that it helps you to do all these things? Because it's a very big struggle to. I see my weekends are filled with kids' activities. My evenings are filled with. Yeah. So I still want to do things.
Yeah, man. You feel the pain.
So is there any like automatic things that you did?
The one thing that's always kept me motivated is the working out stuff. Like finding the time to do that.
That's not time.
Yeah, yeah, like specifically the working out because, and again, not just like lifting weights to look good, just like mentally, like blowing up your brain and something, and like it does a chemical thing, it gives you energy. So if you're looking for like a specific thing that I've always done, like that, if I go too long without engaging in that, then I'm not nearly as productive. Eating right would fall into there. Other than that, it's just a priority list. You know, what falls where and being comfortable with how that's set. I wish there was a better answer. I wish my app worked better. It does work pretty good, by the way. Anybody else? Yeah.
So you mentioned that you didn't really think out the monetization in advance for that app. I'm probably in a similar situation where I don't know. Well, I don't have any financial background and I don't understand that stuff. So I would probably
Stop just put yourself in a bucket.
Okay. Yeah. I guess my question is that do you think? I would think that building that kind of influence and building an app like that would still be good for your reputation going in front of VCs. But do you think that could have like a negative impact? If they're like, oh yeah, that guy makes things but doesn't know.
Yeah.
Like okay. So.
And if you go too long with them, like if that's the issue we were having with that one, is like I didn't want to keep going with it and start to have users not be having a good experience with it anymore. So yeah, like for instance, I wanted to open source that a while back, and my partner wouldn't let me do it because like that'd be detrimental to our career because the code is so bad. But I think so. There's a fine line. Like try it. I think you'll have more respect from investors from us if you know when to kill it. You said like I started this and it didn't work for these reasons, and I killed it early on, right?
Okay.
If I was looking at myself, I would be very critical of those things that kind of hung on for a while. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was asking.
Yes.
Is there some avenues where there's a pain but there is no solutions or things being done that you think people should be working on?
That's a big one. That's a lot. Read the book Abundance. Have you heard of that book yet?
No.
Go read that. I'll answer that shortly. That's a big answer, and I think we need to wrap up. But go check out the book Abundance because it'll give you a million ideas of what you should be working on from a really global, like positive perspective. Has anybody read it? Okay, I expect everybody to have it read. But
Next passage.
I'm serious. Read that. Actually, I don't even read it because it's so dense. I had it on an audiobook. I listened to it on the drive down here. So check that out. It'll give you plenty of ideas. Off the cuff, I'd say discovery is still a big problem to be solved. I'll stop there for a while. Is that good?
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. We're gonna stick around.